But we're not living in typical times, pretty clearly. This pattern is not obtaining anymore right now. This article in Reuters that was trying to explain why repo rates are so high, that was saying it had something to do with dealer balance sheets and the distortion of their inventories. They're holding all these bills. Okay. In that article, they also said that since January, the repo rate has been moving in a band between about 16 basis points and about 30. Okay. So in other words, it's always been above the Fed funds effective, okay, but sometimes not very much above and sometimes a lot more above. Okay. So now let's just apply the same logic that I gave before, the Bagehot logic. Okay. What does this mean? What does it mean for the market rate to be higher than the official rate? What it means is that the Fed is trying to be very elastic. It feels there's too much discipline in the market. The market rate of interest is too high. It's trying to suck it down. It's trying to pull it down by its operations, by pegging the Fed funds rate down. Pegging the Fed funds rate below the repo rate means there's an arbitrage. Okay? Banks can borrow in the Fed funds market and then lend in the repo market. Okay? And there's a nice little 15 basis point pickup that you can get for doing that. And the repo market is the market where everyone is. All credit is, right? Only banks are in the Fed funds market. Well, it's not entirely true, but it's narrower anyway. Anyone can be. So they're trying desperately to keep the bank rate below the market rate to encourage this expansion in order to facilitate the recovery of the economy. The fact that even though they've tried so hard, okay, the repo rate stays above the Fed funds rate is, to me, a little worrisome. Okay, that it says there's problems out there. There's people out there who need liquidity, and they're bidding for it, and they keep bidding for it, and that's what's keeping the repo rate high. That's the market they can participate in. It's so that even though there's this incentive, you know, to borrow in the Fed funds market and then lend on in the repo market, it's not enough to satisfy the liquidity needs in the dollar funding markets. Okay, the dollar funding markets are under stress. This behavior of the repo rate over the last 6 months is the thing that the Fed would have been watching and thinking, should we do another QE? You know, we're keeping the Fed funds rate low. Is it having any effect? Okay, and apparently they came to feel not enough. We need to do something more dramatic, and that's what they're doing now. They're going and they're directly buying mortgage-backed securities and doing this sort of thing, not with a repo loan, not temporary, okay, but $40 billion a month here, like this. So they're directly injecting reserves into the system here and pushing on that as hard as they can. Will it work? That takes us back to what the FT was saying today. John Maynard Keynes used to talk about the limits of monetary policy, that it's a lot better at slowing down the economy than speeding up the economy. He called expansionary monetary policy, he sometimes spoke of it as pushing on a string. So it's like there's a string between you and me, and if I tug on that string, I can pull you with me, okay? But if I push on that string, the string just collapses onto the floor. It doesn't push you. It's not a rod. It's not a rigid rod pushing you. And so this is pushing on a string, okay? They're trying, but it's a lot of push for not much movement, and so I think that shows. So let me just recap there. This style of analysis that you've just watched me do, okay, is typical of what you'll see in this class too, which is looking at patterns of interest rates, looking at patterns of also quantities and balance sheets, and then asking yourself, what does that tell you must be happening? behind the scenes. These are clues. These are detective clues for where are there strains in the system, how much strains are there. When the financial crisis was happening in the fall of 2007, the spread of LIBOR over the Fed funds rate went to 100 basis points. Never seen that in 15 years of teaching money and banking. Okay, but for somebody who knows about the Eurodollar market and knows about the Fed funds market, you start to say, well, what must be happening then is Europe, and it tells you something. It tells you something about the world, watching these prices, about where the strains are and who's in trouble. And so when I see anomalous price structures like this, I mean, I don't trade these markets. I don't read the paper necessarily every day. So it was really only Monday that I noticed, geez, the repo rate is really way out of whack. Okay, so I had to spend 2 days figuring that out and saying, what's that all about? What could possibly be behind that? I don't know. We're going to find out. History will tell us. We'll find out what the Fed was reacting to, or when people publish their balance sheets, you'll find out. Okay, but what you can see always, every day, are the prices. The prices are quoted every day, and they're visible things. So and the spreads are the key. The spreads between these prices is where all the information is. Looking just at the level of interest rates, as your intermediate macro textbook does, right? There's one interest rate, right? They're not even really sure whether it's a long-term interest rate or a short-term interest rate usually, okay? But there's one interest rate there, and they say, oh, all the other interest rates, they all move together. Well, they kind of do, they kind of do, that's right. But, 15 basis points seems a tiny little number. But usually that relationship is the other way around, okay? And when spreads reverse, the incentives are exactly the opposite of what they were when they were the other way around. So the flows have reversed. This is big information, even though it's only tiny little numbers, watching these spreads. And there are other spreads like this too that we'll be talking about in this course. And that's what makes reading the FT a constant excitement. It's like another page in that thriller you're reading, like another clue you get about who done it, and where it's being done, and to whom it's being done. And that's part of my excitement every day in teaching this class too. So I've just put in real time my notion of what's happening in the world, based entirely on what I've just read in the FT and these prices. I have no secret information about anything. So now we will see. We will see what happens in the next few months, and see if this proves to be insightful or just wrong. And then we'll get some more information and we'll form another hypothesis.